Under Your Bed is a psychological drama thriller that follows Ji-Hoon, a loner forgotten by society who obsesses over his old classmate Yeon, who he interacted with once or twice back in college 9 years ago. Now, in the present day, he decides to track her down, expecting to be met with the same radiant woman from his memories, only to instead find her completely dejected as she's become a victim of her controlling husband's abuse. And so, Ji-Hoon's obsession increases as he begins to observe Yeon's daily life through a number of spy cameras and microphones, and even by hiding under her bed. Needless to say, it's a pretty bizarre and twisted concept, and viewers should be warned that there's a number of graphic scenes of domestic and sexual abuse that may be hard to watch. However, as the film opens up, I was instantly drawn in by how striking the visuals are, as the mostly static shot compositions present such contemplative imagery that feels both wide and isolating, yet simultaneously tight, restrictive, and claustrophobic due to the 4:3 aspect ratio, effectively making good use of the format to capture a sense of helplessness and distant intimacy as we similarly observe the central characters through a similar scope of surveillance. It's a strangely welcoming aspect into an otherwise disturbing setting and introduction, as we witness a man return home and count down how long it takes his wife to open the door before he exerts his dominance over her and unleashes his frustrations upon her, all while Ji-Hoon hides under the bed listening to everything, and we the viewer watch on in horror. We then get properly introduced to Ji-Hoon and his mindset, learning of his lonely upbringing and meaningless existence, having been disregarded by his family at a young age and failing to receive anyone's love or attention. In fact, the only time he had been called by his name since childhood was his first interaction with Yeon, who seemed to acknowledge him as an actual human being, which is why he holds her in such high regards. But after all these years, he's succumbed to nothingness with no reason to live. So there's an interesting foundation to this character, who is undoubtedly unnerving with his appearance and actions. And it goes on to present a different outlook on the stalker angle that you might even empathize with, especially when compared to Yeon's violent and abusive husband. But at the same time, the writing and direction here is actually rather self-aware, and I felt it never tries to portray Ji-Hoon as anything other than the lesser of two evils, as he is morally corrupt regardless of how well-intentioned he may seem. And as you join him in his observations, you start to wonder why he's never tried to intervene and stop the abuse after observing Yeon for so long, which is part of the reason why I was so compelled to keep watching, as I was often wondering where the movie was going and when or if he would ever take action. And this not only further contributes to a tense and uncomfortable environment, but it also opens the door to something a lot more profound than what's initially on the surface, as it's clear how Yeon's marriage has left her disconnected from the outside world with no sense of identity, diminishing her existence to only serve as an object for her husband to dominate, and, unknowingly, an image for Ji-Hoon to obsess over to escape from his meaningless life. Yeon is only ever really perceived as something she's not, or perhaps once was, through the perspectives of these male characters, while our own outside perspective as a viewer observing this all allows us to see her as something more, which does offer a depressing but thought-provoking experience, as Lee Yoon-Woo's portrayal of Yeon is wrapped up in sadness and despair in every one of her scenes. It's really bleak and hard to sit through, but it's succinctly captured to deliver contrasting ideas and complex dynamics on the themes of abuse, loneliness, obsession, trauma, and identity enveloped under this quiet yet sinister lens of female objectification, intricately interwoven alongside the central concept of being forgotten that effectively shapes the narrative and navigates the movie towards an impactful conclusion, because this desire to be remembered is, in quite a twisted way, the only avenue of hope for both Ji-Hoon and Yeon. And I think the way the writing and direction builds up and pays off on this feels appropriate without necessarily being rewarding, as there is an element here that seems as though it could be romanticizing or perhaps even justifying certain negative aspects. After all, the lead character you have no choice but rooting for is an obsessive stalker, and the movie does make it a point to highlight the cycle of abuse by portraying the husband as a victim himself, having been abused by his parents when he was a child. So there are aspects here that you will and should disagree with and find off-putting. But with this also being more of an art house movie, there's a lingering quietness and disjointed structure that wants you to think about and question these flawed perspectives in service of the bigger picture, as the whole voyeuristic surveillance angle initially plays on your curiosity and lures you in to an unsettling, bleak, and helpless atmosphere, impactfully presented with a purposeful implementation of uncomfortable and explicit scenes fueled by elements of real-world horror, and a clash of perspectives and concerning characterizations that reflect on the harsh realities of abuse and objectification that women face. That being said, the writing, direction, performances, and cinematography all greatly complement each other and come together to deliver a very well-crafted movie overall. It is a bit of a hard movie to recommend though, due to its explicit nature and the disturbing depictions of abuse. But if that doesn't put you off, then I would highly recommend watching this movie, and it's currently available to stream for free on Tubi.